Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /IDontWorkHereLady, where Karens seem to think that everybody on Earth is meant to serve and obey them. And in today's episode, we've got Karens getting arrested, getting fired, and one OP tells a story about the time a Karen manager thinks they're an employee, and it just gets way worse from there. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories. Don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. I live in a rural farming town, and this happened at the local feed store. Think like Tractor Supply, but a mom and pop owned version. On this day, I went to get my usual stuff: chicken feed, dog food, etc. And I had my 5-year-old daughter with me. She's looking at the horse riding equipment as she's dying to start lessons. I walk over and we start discussing what she likes and what she needs to start when a lady comes over and she starts talking about horses. I admittedly know nothing, but assumed she was just an excited fellow equestrian who overheard my daughter and I. The woman then starts asking for recommendations on stuff, and I admit that I'm not an expert and that she might need to ask someone else. Hearing me say that, the lady gives me the dirtiest look. She then went on about how employees should be knowledgeable about their products. Completely oblivious to what she was hinting at, I give a polite chuckle and I say, yeah, the family that owns this place is great. They would be way more help than me. The woman again suggests that employees should be knowledgeable about their products in store, and she asked me for a specific type of rein, and I again suggested getting someone else, as I'm just here with my daughter picking up a few things. The woman then looks down at my daughter and then back up at me, and she says, I didn't know the feed store doubled as a daycare. You shouldn't be allowed to bring such a small child to work. What kind of place is this? Absolutely dumbfounded, I say I don't work here, and that I'm just letting my daughter get her excitement out by looking at the products in the aisle we're in. Again, I suggest asking an actual employee because the family who owns the shop is terrific, and they've been in business for decades. With a very snotty look, the woman says, I know you work here. I've seen you here almost every time I come in. You must be having a day off, but you could at least help me. It's at this point I duck out of the conversation to chase my daughter, who wanders off, and then I get checked out. As I'm leaving the store and giving county gossip with the clerk, who's a friend of mine, the Karen walks up to us and she starts complaining about how unprofessional I am and how even for a family business, small kids should not be allowed to join employees on their shift. Hearing Karen say that, the clerk looks at her like she's plumb dumb, and then tells her, our customers are welcome to bring their kids in. I don't know why they wouldn't be allowed. The lady still doesn't get it though, and she huffs some more how we're lying to her. I just pick up my hay, get loaded in the truck, and as I'm driving off, the lady flips me the bird and she yells something about me. Probably nothing nice. I'm still confused how somebody who frequents the only feed store in the county that's been running for decades thinks there's some wild conspiracy going on about me working there. It gave me a good chuckle, though. Typical Karens, guys, right? Don't get what they want, resort to being rude as heck. I bet she probably thought OP was the hired help or something. That, or based on her Karen logic, since every time she was there, OP happened to be there as well, they're automatically an employee, which makes it even dumber. So a bit about me is I'm a late riser. I like to wake up at 11 a.m. or later, but I'm also an avid fisherman, and sometimes these two things clash, like a couple of days ago. I was out getting our supplies for lunch, and that took me to the local supermarket chain in a minuscule town 50 miles from home at 7 a.m. while we got another member in my party his fishing license. I'm just stalking around the aisles like a zombie, sipping my coffee and praying for my damn headache to go away. I'm wearing black athletic pants, black water shoes, and a raggedy camo long-sleeve shirt. My hair is everywhere, and I have one hell of a 5 o'clock shadow going on. Despite my appearance, my foul mood, my headache, I'm still trying to be pleasant with everyone because, hey, everyone deserves a smile, right? But apparently, willingly interacting with somebody you don't know automatically means you're an employee. That said, allow me to introduce Trophy Wife, the Karen of the story. Karen's a 50-ish-year-old woman who dresses like she's 20. She seems like one of those women who's at church every Sunday so she can gossip after the service about how grand her life is. I'm also willing to bet that she has live, laugh, love in at least 10 places in her home. I'm just walking down the aisle when I hear, "Hey you, stop." The Karen then marches up to me and she says, "Find me these." She then shows me her phone with a picture of the item she's looking for on it. Then I kind of realize what's going on. I tell her, "No, go find an employee." That's when Karen says, "You are an employee." And I want to note, she said it slow like I was an idiot. At this point, I'm getting irritated as I've only got a limited amount of time. I tell Karen, "Ma'am, I'm not an employee, so kindly go find an employee." I then gesture to the side of the store that I'm not going to, and I begin walking off. At this point, Karen shoves her cart in front of me, blocking my way, and she says, "Excuse me? Do you want to keep working here or what? What did you say to me? Where's your manager?" I just repeat myself and I say, "Go find an employee. F off over there. It's too damn early to deal with you or anyone else's BS. I'm on a schedule, so do us both a favor and F off over there." The woman at this point gasps and she says, "F you. I'll have you know that my husband is the owner of..." I just stop her right there and I say, "I don't give a crap who your husband is in this ratty-ass town. What's he going to do to me? And tell him if he's gonna pay for plastic surgery to pay the big bucks, because you are one saggy old bitch." I then proceed to shove her cart out of the way and finish my shopping. But that was not the end of her. I'm at the cash register, handing my money to the cashier, when out of nowhere I hear this woman shrieking, saying, "There he is." I roll my eyes and turn to see Karen strutting triumphantly towards me, with a manager following. She then says, "I want him fired. He's rude." My poor cashier almost fainted, thinking that somehow he had done something wrong. The manager recognizes that it's I the harpy's shrieking for. The manager tells her he doesn't work here. Karen then turns on him like he's an idiot or something, and she says, "How dare you defend him?" It's at this moment I get on the phone with police and I tell them, "Yes, I'm at local grocery store chain in this town and there's a woman here who's causing quite the ruckus, and I'm worried she may become violent." So long story short, the police arrive and her face goes white as she falls to the floor sobbing and wailing incoherently. As the officers escorting her out, she was scream-crying that she didn't get to buy her stuff. Well, she should have thought about that before causing an unnecessary scene, right? Like, I just don't get how some people can't take no for an answer, guys. Like, it should have been, "Oh, you don't work here, let me go find somebody else to help me." But that would make way too much sense, right? Like, some people love escalating things to the point cops are involved. But to be fair, that woman did seem like she needed help of some sort, and I do hope she gets the help she needs. So about a year ago, I worked selling solar panel systems. This job required me to wear khakis and a blue polo when I was meeting customers. One particular day, after a meeting with a homeowner, I decided to stop by my local Walmart to get some more pens and a notepad for my work bag. Of course, with wearing a blue polo, I consistently got asked if I worked there by other customers. And I would help if I knew what they were after, but I always told them that I didn't work there, and they were always kind. So this fateful day, I grabbed my pens and paper and checked out in the self-checkout section. As I was leaving, I hear somebody say behind me, "And just where do you think you're going?" Now, a little bit about me is I try to mind my own business as much as possible. I don't like to get wrapped up in other people's drama. When I hear outbursts like that in public, I assume it's not because of me. I also try to follow the rules as much as possible. In this case, I assume it wasn't me because I paid for everything. So I just continue to my car. Roughly 30 feet from my car, I hear again, "Hey you, stop." I do turn around at that one because that's typically what you say to a thief. An employee who can only be described as a Karen is marching towards me, and she's 8 different kinds of pissed off. The woman starts reaming into me how I'm abandoning my shift, and I'm not supposed to get off for another 3 hours. Meanwhile, I'm just standing there bewildered because I genuinely have no clue what she's talking about. I try to let her know that I don't work there, but the woman won't let me get a word in. Eventually, she says, "Forget it, you're fired." And I wait about 5 seconds and I tell her, "I don't work here, I've never worked here." The woman then stared at me and she muttered, "Sorry," and then ran back inside. I'm still not sure what happened, but that's my tale of being fired from a job I never worked at. Update: I've been banned from that Walmart. The manager in the story apparently has a memory like an elephant, and she was working there today. I went in to pick up a couple of things and return one thing for my wife. I'm waiting in the return line and the person in front of me is having some issues with the return, so the employee helping them calls for a manager. It's of course the same lady. I recognized her immediately, and as it turns out, she recognized me, kind of. The woman points at me and she tells me I'm not allowed to shop at this Walmart anymore, and if I don't leave, she'll call the police. So I ask her why I was banned. The woman said she didn't remember, but she knew I was. So I, of course, left. So I was fired from a Walmart I didn't work at by a power-tripping manager because I apparently look like somebody who worked there, and now I'm banned. Great. My wife and I have been cackling over this for a couple of days, and I thought you'd find it funny as well. Final update. Recently, my family moved to a new neighborhood around the corner from the Walmart. After meeting my new neighbors, I found out that one worked at this Walmart. I told her the story because I still think it's hilarious, and she let me know that that manager, who, let's call her Gertrude, was arrested and fired. Good old Gertie apparently had a history of banning people like she did to me, but nobody really ever complained, so nothing ever got done. She was just shifted from department to department, but one day, she got a little too aggressive with an off-duty cop and tried to forcefully remove her from the store, which inevitably led to Gertrude punching the cop. She was arrested and finally fired. My neighbor and most of her coworkers rejoiced. Karma can be a beautiful thing. Psycho power-tripping managers, I tell you. And we all know the reason she banned OP was because of her ego, right? "Oh, I mistook you for an employee. How embarrassing. Now get out of my store and never come back." I'm just glad to know that OP's ban was lifted and they can now shop at Walmart again, even though that ban probably wasn't legit in the first place. That said though, there had to have been so many complaints about that manager and nothing was done until she punched a cop. Why am I not surprised? Hashtag Walmart. So it finally happened to me. After years of wishing I'd encounter a Karen, I finally have a story to share. For some context, I work at a pretty popular grocery store in the Midwest that's based out of Iowa. Now, when I say popular, I mean popular. The town I lived in voted this grocery store the best grocery store in the county for 3 years in a row, and this store opened in 2015. That said, this happened last night. I had just gotten off work and I was still in my work uniform on my way home when I realized I forgot to get groceries after I clocked out. Instead of turning around to go back to the store, I decided to stop by Walmart since it was on my way back to my apartment and I only needed 2 things. So I go into Walmart, tired from my 9-hour shift, and I go look for some bread to make French toast in the morning. I'm just standing in front of the bakery, looking for the right type of bread for a few minutes, when I feel a tap on my shoulder and someone sighing heavily. When I turned around, I saw her, Karen. The woman had the haircut, the makeup, everything. I ask her, "Can I help you?" Karen says, "I've been standing here for minutes waiting for you to help me, and you are just looking at bread." That's when I tell her, "Ma'am, I don't work here. I work at a different store down the road. I'm just a customer." Karen then pauses for a second, and she looks at my shirt before huffing in my direction. The woman says, "You're lying. You think you can get away with being lazy at work. I won't stand for that. I'm getting your manager." I just said, "Whatever, lady," and Karen storms off with her cart, and I carry on with my shopping. I grab the bread I needed and a gallon of milk. I'm about to go to checkout when I see Karen come barreling towards me with a manager in tow. Karen shouts, "That's her. That's the worker who's not doing her job." The manager gives me a confused look, noticing my polo that has the name of the store I work at. The manager then says, "Ma'am, this girl doesn't work here. And you..." She then gives Karen a closer look, and she says, "You are not supposed to be in this store. You need to get out before I call the police." The woman then storms off, and the manager apologizes to me for the trouble. And the best part about this story is I had a feeling in my gut that she was a bit crazy. The manager then tells me that Karen was at the top of the list of banned customers for the store. Apparently, on top of harassing random customers, there were 3 recorded times where she left carts of frozen or cold products in the aisles. Hundreds of dollars worth of product for hours, and she left the store without paying for it. I'm talking expensive steaks, crab legs, lobsters, cheesecakes, milk, etc. All of this product had to be thrown away because it was no longer safe for consumption. So this happened about a year and a half ago, but something came up today that reminded me of it. I was at the local grocery store chain looking for something for dinner. Their uniform is tan slacks and a branded denim blue button-down short sleeve shirt. I can't remember what I was wearing, but I can tell you for sure that my outfit wasn't even close to that. It's also worth mentioning that I had a big pair of over-ear headphones on, listening to some tunes at way too loud a volume. So I'm standing in the middle of an aisle looking for something, when a disheveled young man puts himself between me and the food. I distinctly remembered the guy reeking of booze and body spray. His lips start moving, so I take my headphones off. And that's when the guy asked, rather loudly, "Where's the beer?" Now, I wanted to get out of the situation quickly, so I just say to him, "Sorry dude, I don't know, I don't work here." I then put my headphones back on and start to walk away. That's when the guy rips my headphones off, threw them on the ground, and he asked again, angrily this time, "Where is the beer?" At this point, I paused and I thought about just booking it. The dude's obviously wasted and he's angry and escalating. That's a dangerous situation to be in. Instead, I did something stupid, and I shot back at him with, "I said I don't work here, man. Besides, don't you think you've had enough?" And that's when the guy takes a swing at me. Now, in this moment, I had a few things working in my favor. Number 1, the guy's drunk. His coordination isn't currently his strong point. Number 2, this wasn't exactly David versus Goliath. I'm a short guy, so most people are bigger than me, but I'm not scrawny. Average build. But it's not like this guy was effing 6'2" and made of steel. Number 3, I've done martial arts for almost 20 years. Now, I'm not some badass MMA fighter though. I just started as a kid. I was never award-winning or best in my class, just persistent. I still keep up with my practice at home to keep my form and stay in shape. But given how long it's been since I've so much as sparred, and how I've never been in a real fight, he and I were both surprised when muscle memory kicks in, and he found himself redirected face first into the floor. First time I've ever done that. The guy gets up, and he scoots back a bit, and he starts yelling how he's gonna sue me, and I'll be arrested for assault. If he hadn't drawn any attention before, he certainly has now. I was honestly pretty freaked out myself. I remember he was bleeding from his nose, and I think it broke on impact. I was worried with breaking his nose that I was actually going to end up in handcuffs, but I wasn't going to run out of the store and flee. So eventually, a manager of some kind showed up, and he tried to figure out what was happening. I tried to explain, while the other guy kept yelling over me. The cops were called, and we both end up sitting there for an hour it takes them to show up. The cops then separate us, then ask some employees what happened. The manager also took one of them to the back, to what I assume was the office, to look at security footage. They came back sometime later, and the cops put the drunk dude in handcuffs and carted him off. I was asked to give a statement explaining what happened, as well as my phone number if they need to follow up. Then I was left to go on my way. I never did hear from them again, and after a few weeks of worried waiting, that was the last I thought about it until today. Today, I was back at the same store doing weekly grocery shopping. When I got to the register checkout, there he was. The drunk dude was my cashier. I didn't recognize him, but he recognized me. The guy was sober, clean-shaven, cleaned up, and just a completely different person. After he confirmed I was who he thought I was, he launches into an apology. I told him it was water under the bridge, and I was happy that he seems to have bounced back. So we start talking, and he rings up my stuff, and then he explains. The guy's alcoholism led him to drop out of college and struggle to hold down a job. He had been spiraling for a year or two before the incident. Apparently losing a drunken fight and catching charges for public intoxication and assault were the wake-up call he needed to make changes in his life. He also said as soon as he was out of police custody, he checked himself into rehab and joined a support program. The last time he drank was the morning of the day we met. Now, he's a year and a half sober, and he's even signed up for classes at the local community college. I told him I was really happy for him. I asked him quietly how he managed to convince the place to hire him. He said he wouldn't say who, but it helps that somebody at corporate happens to be his sponsor. Now that was an ending I didn't expect. Guys, I always love a story where someone takes control of their life and turns it around, and I really hope it's only up from here. Like, what a wholesome story, right? And who would have thought that getting hit in the face by a random stranger would have such a positive outcome? I guess that's proof you really can knock the sense back into people. And guys, before we finish off the episode, if you missed the last episode on the channel, I read this story about a whole workplace getting back at a nasty Karen boss by tricking her into eating chocolate laxatives. And this person shares their similar story that I hope you'll enjoy. So to preface this, I will state that it's not good to upset anyone in the military supply network. This is especially true for a supply NCO, a non-commissioned officer who can be both creative and vindictive to those who earn his ire. That said, one of my biggest pet peeves was troopies who walked into my supply room and decide to go through things on my counter or my desk. It's for this reason that I purchased 2 bags of these sweet little revenge snacks, aka yummy laxatives. I briefed my minions that morning that the snacks were to be unsullied by their hands. I told them that I would know and it would not go unpunished by both myself and the higher powers. They thought I was joking, but they decided to not test my authority before my eyes. With that said, I placed the bowl of laxative candies on the back part of the counter, just in reach of anyone loitering inside my supply room. The rules were posted for all to see when they came in, so they were warned. A large sign that said, "If you touch my stuff, you will be punished." They decide to test me though, I guess. On this weekend, we were set to do some general cleaning and maintenance within the battalion, so my desk was rather busy. I was in and out of my office all day. However, I made sure to take general measurements of my bowl of horror every time I came back. My supply room is 1 door down from the latrines, and the row of male commodes is on the other side of the wall from my desk. Shortly before lunch, my unholy wrath began to strike. One poor soul. He hit the latrine, and he sounded as if he kicked the stall door open. For the next 30 minutes, I listened to the sounds of a live humpback whale being butchered by a blind man wielding a chainsaw. It wasn't long before another troop, this time a female, makes her way to the latrine. She came from the indoor pistol range, and she had to cross in front of my door. I saw a pale woman with sweat streaking her face. She was hobbling with one hand on the wall for support and the other on her stomach, praying for just a little more time. For lunch, I ripped into an MRE, and I listened to the ever-growing chorus of those who had so far snuck down half my bowl of brightly colored, improvised, explosive devices. I wasn't sure if the other side of the building was seeing the same activity in the latrines, but the smell reached my door by the end of lunch. One of my minions did not return from lunch, so I volunteered another person to perform a scouting mission into the male latrine in search of my wayward soul. He was there, and the guy had been there since the beginning of lunch. By 3 p.m., I was told that the unit was being locked down, and there was an emergency meeting in the battalion briefing room. I had a suspicion of the reason, but I attended as I was ordered to do so, and by this time, my bowl of gelatinous bowel howitzer ammunition was only 1/4 filled. The meeting began slightly off schedule. At 15:22, the sergeant major walks into the room, and he looked as if he just performed a 3-day combat operation without sleep. The battalion surgeon walks in, and he told us that there was a high chance that the unit came in contact with a strange stomach bug. Roughly half the battalion was complaining about stomach cramps and explosive diarrhea. It seemed to mostly be affecting the headquarters, and until symptoms cleared up, the unit was in lockdown and cleaning mode. I went back to my supply room with the intent to bag up the remaining evidence of my involvement, only to find out that the bowl was missing. My minions were too wrapped up to notice anything though, so I began a search for the evidence that would probably land me in front of a firing squad. The empty bowl was located in the admin offices. Someone had found it, and they decided to liberate it from my supply room for the only group that I didn't want to upset. But they had already consumed the remainder of the biological weapons. As I left with the bowl, I heard the familiar sound of incoming fire from the senior pay clerk's desk, followed shortly after by what sounded like Lama's breathing. That weekend, the entire building was cleaned from one side to the other. 3/4 of the enlisted and half the officers were hit with this mysterious stomach bug, and the medical supply room was in desperate need of more IV kits. Now, I don't know if my message got across, but it was definitely an entertaining weekend. OP is so freaking evil for this one, basically crippling a whole squad. But hey, they were warned, and I'm just surprised that nobody caught on to his warning and came after him. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that story. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitledpeople episode where bad bosses are getting absolutely ruined. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.